The navy blue blazer I had picked out for my retirement celebration still smelled faintly of my late husband's cologne when I pulled it from the closet that morning. I held it for a moment, wondering why I had even kept it after Robert passed 3 years ago. Maybe because it reminded me of better times, when family meant something more than an ATM with a heartbeat. I folded it carefully and placed it in my suitcase, not knowing that within 48 hours, I would be wearing it to a meeting that would change everything. I was 68 years old, and I had just spent 9 hours in the emergency room because my heart decided to throw what the doctors called a minor arrhythmia scare. Minor. That word should have been comforting, but when you're alone in a hospital bed at 2 in the morning, nothing feels minor. My son Daniel had rushed in with his wife Veronica, both of them with faces painted with concern that I wanted so desperately to believe was genuine. Veronica arrived first, her designer handbag matching her designer concern. She swept into my hospital room like she was making an entrance at a charity gala, her perfume arriving 3 seconds before she did. Behind her, Daniel looked tired, his tie loosened, his hair graying at the temples in a way that made him look more like his father every day. I reached for his hand, but Veronica was already repositioning my pillows, adjusting my blankets, asking the nurse questions in that voice she used when she wanted people to know she was educated and important. My best friend Carol tried to visit an hour later. I heard her voice in the hallway, that warm, familiar sound that had gotten me through Robert's funeral, and 1,000 smaller heartbreaks. But Veronica intercepted her before she could reach my room. Through the partially open door, I heard every word. "I'm sorry, but Margaret needs her rest. The doctors said only immediate family right now. I'm sure you understand." Carol's voice was gentle but firm. "I've known Margaret for 30 years. I think she'd want to see me." Of course she would, but we need to think about what's best for her right now. She's confused and overwhelmed. Maybe tomorrow? Tomorrow never came. Carol texted me later that night. "Veronica won't let anyone in. Are you okay? Do you need me to push harder?" I texted back that I was fine, that Veronica was just being protective, that I appreciated her trying, but something cold had settled in my stomach, and it wasn't the hospital food. Daniel sat by my bed, holding my hand, and for a moment I saw the boy who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. But then Veronica's phone rang, and she stepped out into the hallway. I heard fragments of her conversation through the door. "Yes, she's stable, but you can see why this is concerning. I know. We need to think about long-term solutions. No, she's very resistant to change. You know how stubborn she can be." Who was she talking to? About what solutions? About my stubbornness? The cardiologist came in the next morning, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, who had gentle hands and a no-nonsense attitude. She reviewed my charts, ordered more tests, and then sat down on the edge of my bed in a way that made me trust her immediately. "Mrs. Harrison, your heart is actually in pretty good shape for 68. This episode was likely triggered by stress and some electrolyte imbalances. Nothing that can't be managed with some lifestyle modifications and a low-dose medication. You should be back to your normal routine within a few weeks." Relief flooded through me like warm water. "So I'm not dying?" Dr. Patel smiled. "Not anytime soon if you take care of yourself. Reduce stress, eat better, maybe some light exercise. But no, this is not a death sentence." I saw Daniel's shoulders relax, but Veronica's face remained carefully neutral. She asked the doctor a series of questions about my cognitive function, my ability to make decisions, my capacity to live independently. Dr. Patel looked confused. "Your mother-in-law is completely cognitively sound. There's no indication of any decline whatsoever. Why do you ask?" "Oh, just wanting to understand the full picture," Veronica said smoothly. "With older patients, you never know." I was 68, not 98, and my mind was as sharp as it had ever been, but something about the way Veronica said older patients made me feel ancient and diminished. They brought me home 2 days later. My little house on Maple Street had never looked so welcoming. I had bought it 32 years ago with Robert, raised Daniel there, planted the garden that still bloomed every spring with daffodils and roses. It was modest but mine, paid off 10 years ago, worth about $650,000 according to the last assessment. I loved every creaky floorboard. Veronica walked through with a critical eye. "These stairs are dangerous, Margaret. What if you fall? And this kitchen is so outdated. Do you even have a grab bar in your bathroom? I've lived here for 3 decades without falling, I said, trying to keep my voice light. I think I'll be fine. But you're not getting any younger. We need to think about these things. When had my life become a group project? Daniel helped me settle on the couch while Veronica made tea. I heard her on the phone again in the kitchen, her voice low and urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Something was being planned. Over the next week, I noticed things, small things at first. Veronica showing up unannounced 3 times, letting herself in with the spare key I had given Daniel for emergencies. Her checking my mail, organizing my medications, asking my neighbors casual questions about whether they had seen me forgetting things or acting confused. Mrs. Chen from next door mentioned it when I ran into her at the grocery store. Your daughter-in-law seems very concerned about you, dear. She asked me if I had noticed any changes in your behavior lately. I told her you were the same sharp Margaret you've always been. My blood ran cold. What exactly did she say? Oh, just that she was worried about you living alone after your hospital stay, asked if I had seen you looking confused or wandering around at odd hours. I told her that was nonsense, but she seemed very persistent. I thanked Mrs. Chen and finished my shopping in a daze. Why was Veronica asking my neighbors if I was losing my mind? I wasn't. I knew exactly what day it was, exactly how much money was in my bank account, exactly what I had eaten for breakfast that morning. There was nothing wrong with my memory or my judgment. But something was very wrong with this situation. The bombshell dropped on a Tuesday afternoon. Daniel and Veronica invited themselves over for lunch. Veronica brought brochures. Glossy, expensive brochures for senior living communities with names like Golden Meadows and Sunset Villa and Harmony Heights. Each one featured smiling elderly people playing checkers, doing yoga, eating gourmet meals in elegant dining rooms. We've been doing some research, Veronica began, spreading the brochures across my coffee table like she was presenting evidence in court. After your health scare, we think it's time to consider some changes. What kind of changes, I asked, though I already knew. The cold feeling in my stomach had turned to ice. Assisted living, Daniel said quietly, not meeting my eyes. Just to be safe, Mom, so you're not alone if something happens. Nothing is going to happen. Dr. Patel said I'm fine. Dr. Patel said you need to reduce stress and take better care of yourself, Veronica corrected. And how can you do that in this big house all by yourself? These communities have nurses on staff, prepared meals, activities. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. I looked at Daniel, trying to find my son somewhere behind those tired eyes. You want to put me in a home? Not a home, Mom. A community. A place where you'd be safe and looked after. I am safe. I've been looking after myself just fine. Veronica leaned forward, her voice taking on that patient tone people use with confused children. Margaret, I know this is hard to hear, but we've noticed some things. The neighbors have noticed some things. You've been forgetting appointments, getting confused about dates. It's natural at your age, but it's concerning. I haven't forgotten anything. And I'm not confused about dates. What are you talking about? She exchanged a look with Daniel, a look that said, See? She doesn't even realize it. It made me want to scream. We just want what's best for you, Daniel said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. And what about what I want? Sometimes we don't know what's best for ourselves, Veronica said gently. That's why you have family. I looked at the brochures again, really looked at them. Each one listed prices, starting at $3,800 per month, going up to $5,500 for the nicer units with private patios and upgraded amenities. Some of these places cost more than my entire monthly retirement income. How exactly am I supposed to afford these places? I asked. My pension is $2,400 a month. There was a pause. Veronica and Daniel exchanged another look, and this time I understood it perfectly. Well, Veronica said carefully, you could sell the house. And there it was. The truth, laid bare on my coffee table between the brochures for Golden Meadows and Harmony Heights. You want me to sell my house? It's just sitting here, Margaret, all this equity, locked up in a property that's too big for you. If you sold it, you could afford the best care possible. I did the math in my head. The house was worth about $650,000. After real estate fees and taxes, I might walk away with $600,000. At $4,500 a month average, that was. I calculated it twice to be sure. 133 months. 11 years. If I lived longer than that, then what? And after 11 years? When the money runs out? Veronica's smile didn't reach her eyes. We'll figure something out, but you might not. I mean, at your age, 11 years is. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. She was betting I'd be dead within 11 years. And if I wasn't, well, that would be someone else's problem. Probably some state-run facility with linoleum floors and the smell of boiled vegetables. I need to think about it, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Of course, Veronica said, gathering up the brochures. Take your time, but not too much time. These places have waiting lists. After they left, I sat in my living room for a long time, looking at the pictures on my walls. Daniel at his high school graduation. Daniel at his wedding. Daniel and Veronica on vacation in Hawaii, a trip I had helped them pay for when Daniel's company was going through layoffs. $32,000 I had given them over the past 8 years for various emergencies. Car repairs, roof repairs, their kitchen renovation. Just a loan, Mom. We'll pay you back. They never paid me back. I picked up my phone and called Carol. I need your help, I said when she answered. Something's wrong, and I need someone I can trust. Carol came over within an hour. I showed her the brochures, told her about the conversations with neighbors, explained Veronica's sudden concern about my cognitive abilities. Carol listened with the quiet intensity of someone who had been a social worker for 30 years before retiring. When I finished, her face was grim. Margaret, do you know what this sounds like to me? Elder abuse? The groundwork for it, she's establishing a narrative, planting seeds with your neighbors, your family, maybe even your doctors. If she can get people to believe you're declining, she can make a case for guardianship or conservatorship. But I'm not declining. I'm completely fine. I know that, and you know that. But if enough people say otherwise, if there's enough documentation, Margaret, once you lose control of your finances and medical decisions, it's incredibly hard to get them back. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in. What do I do? First, you protect yourself. Get your legal affairs in order. Make sure your will is current and clear. Consider a living trust. Document everything. And, she hesitated. You might need to accept that your son is complicit in this. Daniel wouldn't do this to me. Daniel is letting his wife do this to you, which is the same thing. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Carol was right. Daniel had held my hand in that hospital room, but he had also nodded along when Veronica suggested I was too confused to know what was best for myself. He had brought me those brochures. He had looked at me with pity instead of respect. When had I stopped being his mother and become his burden? The next morning I called my financial advisor, Thomas. I had been working with him for 15 years, since Robert died, and I suddenly had to manage everything alone. He knew my portfolio, my pension, my expenses. He knew I was careful with money, that I lived within my means, that I wasn't some doddering old woman who left the stove on and forgot to pay bills. Thomas, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Has anyone contacted you about my accounts? There was a pause. Yes, actually. Your daughter-in-law called last week. She said she was concerned about your ability to manage your finances and wanted to discuss options for oversight. My hand tightened on the phone. What did you tell her? I told her I couldn't discuss your accounts with anyone but you, and that I had no concerns about your financial management whatsoever. You're one of my most organized clients, Margaret. Relief and fury warred in my chest. Thank you for not talking to her. She wasn't happy about it. She mentioned something about consulting an attorney. An attorney. For what? To take control of my money, my house, my life? I hung up and immediately called my own attorney, David Chen. We had drawn up my will after Robert died, but I hadn't reviewed it in years. It was time. David could see me that afternoon. When I arrived at his office, I brought every financial document I owned, bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds, insurance policies. I spread them across his desk like I was presenting my case for sanity. I need you to help me protect myself, I said, and I need you to tell me I'm not crazy for thinking I need protection from my own family. David listened to everything, the hospital stay, the brochures, the conversations with neighbors, the call to my financial advisor. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "You're not crazy. And yes, you need protection. What they're doing isn't illegal yet, but it's heading in a concerning direction. Let's make sure they can't get there." We spent 2 hours updating my documents. A new will that was crystal clear about my wishes. A living trust that would protect my assets. A durable power of attorney for medical decisions that named Carol, not Daniel, as my agent. An advance directive that specified exactly what medical care I wanted and didn't want. "If anyone tries to claim you're incompetent," David said, "we'll have all of this documentation showing you were of sound mind when you made these decisions. We can also get a letter from your doctor confirming your cognitive status." Dr. Patel already told them I was fine. "Get it in writing. And keep copies of everything. If this goes sideways, you'll need evidence." I left his office feeling more in control than I had in weeks. But the feeling didn't last long. That evening, Daniel showed up at my door, alone, without Veronica. For a moment, I let myself hope. Maybe he had come to apologize. Maybe he had realized what his wife was doing and was here to make it right. "Can I come in, Mom?" I let him in, made him coffee the way he liked it, with 2 sugars and too much cream. We sat at the kitchen table where I had helped him with his homework 30 years ago, where we had talked about his dreams and fears, where I had held him when his father died. "Veronica's upset," he said finally. "Veronica's upset," I repeated flatly. Not, "I'm upset," or, "We need to talk about what's happening. She says you called your financial advisor and your attorney. She thinks you're hiding something." "I'm not hiding anything. I'm protecting myself." "From what?" "From being railroaded into selling my house and moving into assisted living when there's absolutely nothing wrong with me." Daniel rubbed his face, a gesture so much like his father it hurt. "Mom, we're not trying to railroad you. We're trying to help. Help me out of my house and into a facility that costs more than my monthly income? Help me spend down all my assets so that in 11 years I'll have nothing left? That kind of help?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Daniel? Explain it to me in a way that makes sense." He was quiet for a long moment. "Veronica thinks the house is too much for you. The maintenance, the yard work, the stairs. She's worried you're going to fall or have another health emergency when no one's around." "And what do you think?" I think I don't want to lose you the way I lost Dad." There it was. The fear underneath everything. I reached across the table and took his hand. "Daniel, I'm not dying." Dr. Patel was very clear about that. This was a minor episode, completely manageable. I'm taking my medication, I'm eating better, I'm being careful. But I'm not ready to give up my independence just because something might happen. But what if it does? What if you fall and no one finds you for hours, days? Then that's my choice to make. This is my life, Daniel. Mine. Not yours, not Veronica's. Mine. He pulled his hand away. "You're being stubborn. I'm being rational, and if you can't see the difference, that's on you, not me." He left without finishing his coffee. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for 10 minutes, his head resting on the steering wheel. I wanted to run out and tell him I was sorry, that I would do whatever he wanted, that I would sell the house and move into Golden Meadows and pretend to be grateful. But I didn't, because I wasn't sorry, and I wasn't going to lie. 2 weeks later, the real ambush came. Daniel called and asked if he could come by to talk. "Just talk," he said. "No brochures, no pressure. Just a conversation." I wanted to believe him, so I said yes. He arrived with Veronica and another man I didn't recognize. The man wore a suit and carried a briefcase and had the kind of smile that made my skin crawl. "Mom, this is Gregory Fletcher. He's an elder law attorney. We asked him to come talk to you about some options." I felt the trap closing. "What kind of options?" Gregory Fletcher sat down in my living room without being invited and opened his briefcase. "Mrs. Harrison, your family is concerned about your well-being. They've asked me to discuss the possibility of establishing a conservatorship to help manage your affairs." "I don't need help managing my affairs." "With respect, Mrs. Harrison, that's not quite accurate. Your son and daughter-in-law have documented several concerning incidents. Confusion about dates and appointments, difficulty managing your medication, inappropriate financial decisions." "What inappropriate financial decisions?" Veronica leaned forward. You gave Carol access to your bank accounts, Margaret. That's not appropriate. I added her as a beneficiary and emergency contact. That's completely appropriate. You changed your will without discussing it with your family. It's my will. I don't need to discuss it with anyone. Gregory Fletcher consulted his notes. There's also been some concern about your recent behavior, paranoia, isolation, suspicion of family members trying to help you. I looked at Daniel. Is that what you think? That I'm paranoid? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Veronica answered for him. We think you're scared and confused, and you're making decisions based on that fear rather than what's actually best for you. Get out, I said quietly. Margaret, please, Daniel started. Get out of my house, all of you, right now. Gregory Fletcher remained calm. Mrs. Harrison, if you refuse to engage in this process voluntarily, we may need to pursue it through the courts. Your family has grounds to petition for conservatorship based on your recent mental and physical health issues. I don't have mental health issues. I had a heart arrhythmia, one time, which is now under control. The medical episode is just one factor. Combined with the reports from neighbors, the sudden changes to your legal documents, your increasingly defensive and hostile behavior toward family members who are trying to help. He was building a case. Right there in my living room, with my son sitting silently beside his wife, this stranger was building a case to take away my autonomy. I stood up. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the police. Veronica stood too. This is exactly what we're talking about. This irrational response to people who care about you. You don't care about me. You care about my house. The words hung in the air like smoke. Veronica's face flushed red. Daniel finally looked at me, and in his eyes I saw guilt. Gregory Fletcher packed up his briefcase. I hope you'll reconsider, Mrs. Harrison. This process is much easier when everyone cooperates. If we have to go through the courts, it becomes expensive and time-consuming for everyone involved. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. Think about it. After they left, I sat in my living room and cried for the first time since Robert died. Not because I was scared, though I was. Not because I felt alone, though I did. But because my son had sat in my home and let a stranger threaten to take everything from me, and he hadn't said a word to stop it. Carol came over when I called. She held me while I cried, and then she helped me think. They're going to court, I said. They're really going to try to take my rights away. Then we fight back. We get ahead of this. How? Documentation, witnesses, evidence that you're completely competent. We get statements from your doctors, your financial advisor, your neighbors. We show the court this is a money grab, not a genuine concern for your well-being. And what if we lose? Then we appeal. But Margaret, you're not going to lose. You're sharp, capable, and independent. You've managed your finances perfectly for years. You have no cognitive issues. They have no real case except manufactured concern. Over the next month, I built my defense. Dr. Patel wrote a detailed letter confirming my cognitive and physical health. My financial advisor provided statements showing my excellent money management. I got a neuropsychological evaluation that proved my memory and decision-making abilities were well above average for my age. I documented every interaction with Daniel and Veronica, every phone call, every visit. Mrs. Chen and my other neighbors gave statements confirming that Veronica had been asking leading questions about my mental state. My attorney obtained Veronica's phone records, showing multiple calls to elder law attorneys and assisted living facilities in the weeks after my hospital stay. The pattern was clear. This wasn't about concern. This was about control. The court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I wore my navy blazer, the one that smelled like Robert. I felt like I was on trial for the crime of aging. Daniel and Veronica were there with Gregory Fletcher. They had brought evidence too. Photos of the inside of my house that Veronica had taken during her unannounced visits, showing dust on shelves and dishes in the sink. Statements from two neighbors who barely knew me, claiming I had seemed confused when they ran into me at the store. A doctor's report about my heart episode that made it sound far more serious than it was. But we had more. Dr. Patel testified that I was in excellent health and fully competent. My financial advisor showed my meticulously organized accounts. The neuropsychological evaluation proved my cognitive function was above average, and then Carol testified. She told the court about the hospital visit Veronica had blocked, about the conversations with neighbors, about how quickly this had all unfolded after my single health scare. She presented documentation showing Veronica's pattern of behavior, the timeline that revealed this wasn't about care but about assets. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a kind face, listened to everything. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up and told my story clearly and calmly. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply stated the facts. Your Honor, I had one health episode. It was minor, it's been treated, and my doctor says I'm fine. In response to that single episode, my son and daughter-in-law tried to convince me to sell my home and move into assisted living that would cost more than I could afford long-term. When I refused and took steps to protect my assets, they hired an attorney to pursue conservatorship. This isn't about my health or my safety. This is about my house. The judge asked me questions. What medications was I taking? Who was my doctor? How did I manage my bills? What were my plans for my estate? I answered every question clearly and specifically. She asked me to do some memory tests right there in the courtroom. Name the president. What day is it? Count backwards from 100 by sevens. I passed every one. Then she asked Veronica a question that changed everything. Mrs. Harrison, if your mother-in-law moved into assisted living and sold her house, where would the proceeds from that sale be kept? Veronica hesitated. In her account, of course. And who would manage that account? Well, that's what the conservatorship is for, to make sure her money is managed properly. By whom? By someone responsible, someone who understands financial matters. Someone like you? Veronica's face colored. I have a business degree. I'm qualified. I see. And your husband, as conservator, would have access to his mother's accounts? For her benefit, yes. The judge made a note. And the $32,000 Mrs. Harrison gave you over the past 8 years, has any of that been repaid? Veronica's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The judge had seen it. The money, the motive, the truth. The ruling came down a week later. Petition denied. The court found no evidence of incompetence, no grounds for conservatorship, no need for intervention. I was declared fully capable of managing my own affairs. I was free. But I had also lost my son. Daniel called once after the hearing. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go that far. Veronica was just worried, and I. You let her, I said. You sat there and let her try to take everything from me. I know, I was wrong. Can we fix this? I don't know, Daniel. Can we? He was quiet for a long time. Veronica says if you're not going to help us, we need to focus on our own lives. Your own lives that you wanted to fund with my house. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is that I gave you everything, and when I needed you to just let me live my own life, you tried to take it away. He hung up. I haven't heard from him since. I'm 69 now. It's been a year since the court hearing. I still live in my house on Maple Street. I still manage my own finances. I still make my own decisions. The daffodils bloomed beautifully this spring. Carol and I have dinner twice a week. I've joined a book club at the library. I volunteer at the local food bank on Tuesdays. I'm taking a watercolor class at the community center. My life is full and rich and entirely my own. I updated my will. Everything goes to charity now, not because I'm angry, though I was, but because I finally understood something important. Love isn't about money. It's not about inheritance or obligation or securing your future at someone else's expense. Real love respects boundaries. Real love trusts. Real love doesn't hire attorneys to take away your rights. Daniel texts sometimes, brief messages on holidays, thinking of you, hope you're well. I respond politely but don't offer more. Veronica blocked me on social media, which is fine. I don't need to see pictures of their vacations or their renovated kitchen or their new car. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice, if I should have been more understanding, more forgiving. Maybe Daniel really was just scared of losing me. Maybe Veronica really did think she was helping. But then I remember sitting in my living room with that attorney, being told I was too confused to manage my own life. I remember my son's silence. I remember the calculations about how many years my house would pay for assisted living before the money ran out. I remember. And I know I made the right choice. Because here's what I learned at 68 years old. You teach people how to treat you. For years, I taught my son that my love came with money attached, that helping him meant sacrificing myself, that his needs were more important than my boundaries. I thought I was being a good mother. I was actually being a convenient one. When I finally said no, when I finally chose myself, he couldn't accept it, because I had taught him that my role was to give, and his role was to take. And when I changed the lesson, he failed the test. I sleep well at night now, not because I don't miss my son, because I do, but because I know who I am. I'm not confused. I'm not declining. I'm not anyone's burden or ATM or problem to solve. I'm Margaret Harrison. I'm 69 years old. I live in a house I own on a street I love and a life I chose. And that's worth more than any inheritance.